Hi everyone, and welcome back to another live stream here at the Australian Reptile Park. Of course, we're closed at the moment, no visitors, but we're still here and we are providing the best care, and we are looking after our animals. And of course, a big part of that is getting them out on walks. For certain species, we don't take Elvis out of his pool for a walk. That would be ridiculously dangerous, but one large reptile that we can get out for a walk, and we do so every single day, is our Komodo dragons. Now, the boy we're looking at here, he's our 10-year-old male. His name is Kraken, and he is an incredible animal. In fact, I think a word you could use to describe Komodo dragons would be majestic. They are so dragon-like, which is, I guess, where they get that dragon name from. But I guess talking more appropriately, you would describe them as a monitor lizard. They're not a dragon, they're a monitor lizard or a varanid, and these are not only the world's largest monitor lizard, but the world's largest lizard in general. Now, I mentioned just before that Kraken is 10 years of age. Now, the Komodo dragon, reasonably long-lived. They could live in excess of 40 years, and Kraken here, he's still got a fair bit of growing to do. Right now, he comes in at about 2.2 meters, so over 7 feet, and he's maybe between 43, 45 kilos. So he's, of course, a very, very large lizard, but he is going to get a little bit larger than this. He could get up to around the 65 or 70 kilo mark, and he's likely to do so in the next 10 years or so. By the time he's 18, 20, I assume that he'll be more or less fully grown. Now, this could get very interesting because Kraken is making a beeline right for another very large reptile, and one we've got out on a walk as well at the moment. In fact, Hugo, while we've been closed, he's been roaming around the park, free roaming lots and lots. Now, I don't want this to get too interesting, so what I'm going to do before Kraken gets excited by Hugo, I'm going to pick him up quickly, and as I do, you can get a bit of an idea as to how large he is. You can see him flicking out that tongue, trying to work out what's going on. Now, it is a beautiful, beautiful day here at the park. The sun is shining, and the sun, for a winter day, has got quite a bit of warmth in it. And these Komodo dragons, they absolutely thrive off that. They love it. In fact, like all diurnal reptiles, Komodo dragons, they're going to come out in the morning or in the afternoon when the sun isn't at its most intense, and they'll bask in the sun, just like Kraken is doing here right now. Now, when he's doing that, you can see he's angled himself right to the sun. It's hitting his back, it's hitting his body, and that will raise his body temperature right up. And in fact, what we've noticed over the years of working with Komodo dragons is they like to keep their body about 37 degrees, or here and there, give or take a few degrees, but it is very, very warm. In fact, a fair bit warmer than most other reptiles, but that's pretty standard for a monitor lizard. They like it nice and hot. Now, whilst Kraken's sitting here so nicely, we can have a close look at his skin here. Kraken and all Komodo dragons, they have incredibly rough, rugose skin, and that's due to their scales. They have a tiny piece of bone underneath each and every scale, a little bit like a crocodile or an alligator, and that makes them quite literally armor-plated. They are extremely tough. Occasionally, Komodo dragons, they may come into contact with one another. They are typically a solitary animal, and so really their tough, armor-plated skin is designed to cop the bite of another Komodo dragon, and they do have quite an horrific bite. A Komodo has extremely large teeth, maybe close to 1 centimeter in length on a male this size, and if he were to bite another Komodo dragon, it would still do a bit of damage, but you can imagine what sort of damage it would do to soft human skin. It would do a lot of damage, and it's certainly not something you ever want to be bitten by. Now, we're back in this same predicament. Kraken making his way toward Hugo. Hey boy. We'll give Kraken a bit of a scratch, and he might stop. No, he's going to keep going. Let's get him going the other way. Now, you can see for such a large, potentially dangerous reptile, Kraken is incredibly calm. He was born in captivity. He was actually born over in the United States, in California, at the Los Angeles Zoo. And he came over to Australia just after he turned 1. Now, of course, that means he's been here at the Reptile Park most of his life, about 9 years or so. And we've been working with both our Komodo dragons, both the male and the female, very extensively for a very long time. So they are extremely used to us, extremely used to coming out here, out into the park. They know the kangaroos. You can see they're not too fazed by the other animals, Hugo included. And this is a really fantastic thing for both us and for the Komodo dragon, because it means that we can bring them out here, we can show people, get people really nice and close, much closer than you would typically be able to get to a dragon in a standard exhibit. And of course, it's fantastic for the lizards as well. One really big important thing about Komodo dragons and keeping them in captivity is keeping them really, really fit and healthy. Komodo dragons, particularly the males like Kraken in the wild, they may walk kilometers in a day sometimes, perhaps 10 or even 15 kilometers. That is a lot of walking, and as a result, those wild Komodo dragons are very, very fit. So what we're doing our best, or what we're attempting to do with our Komodo dragons to the best of our ability, is keep them walking, keep them moving, get them as fit and healthy as we can possibly keep them. And that way, they're basically a replica of what you would see in the wild. You don't want these fit, lean Komodo dragons out in the wild that are walking a lot, and then to have a Komodo dragon in captivity that hardly moves at all. We don't want that, so we like to keep him nice and active and healthy. And he really is quite a prime example of a Komodo dragon. He's quite lean, really fit, really muscular. Now you'll see occasionally, Kraken here, he'll drop the base of his tail down, or his pelvis area, and he'll kind of drag it along the ground. And that's actually because right now it's breeding season, so he's kind of rubbing, scenting, and this is something that they'll do throughout the year, but it's certainly heightened at this time of year. Now the other thing you'll see him doing as he moves along there, he sways the head from side to side, quite typical of all monitor lizards, the way they move, and then he's flicking that tongue. Now the Komodo dragon has quite a long kind of whitish yellow coloured tongue, and all he's doing there, he's picking up scent particles as he moves, and then he can work out exactly what's going on. If he were to perhaps smell the scent of our female Komodo dragon, or something that's really piques his interest, you'll see he'll stop immediately in his tracks, and then he'll just very rapidly tongue flick. In fact, he's giving us a pretty perfect example of that right there, right now. He smelt something there, wasn't too interesting, so now he's moved on. Now you can see his feet as well, very, very large, about the same size as my hand really, quite impressive. And on those feet you'll see he's got those big claws. Now Komodo dragons, when they're small, when they first hatch out of the egg and for the first few years of life, are almost exclusively arboreal, and that means they're living in the trees. They hardly touch the ground at all during, I guess, their toddler years, until they hit about 4 or 5 years old. They get a little bit larger, and then they'll start to spend a lot more time down on the ground. So when they're juveniles, they're using those claws a lot for climbing up in the trees, really great climbers. And then when they get a little bit larger, the males don't really need them so much anymore. They do a bit of digging, but the females are the ones that really utilize their claws. The females, especially the older reproductive girls, they like to dig a lot. They'll dig these big tunnels, burrows, and so they put those claws and their powerful legs to really good use. Now you're going to see Kraken not even rubbing his tail and his back legs there, he's actually rubbing the fore part of his body as well, just scratching around. He's really enjoying coming out here. Of course, whilst he's out here, he's experiencing all sorts of things that he wouldn't typically in his exhibit. So this is not only beneficial for the dragon from a sunlight perspective and an exercise perspective, but also he's just having fun. This is really enriching for Kraken here. Now I have a hunch he might pop down in this patch of sun and have a bit of a bask, and while he does, his tail's going like mad. While he does, we might answer a few questions about Kraken or Komodo dragons.
So how much does Kraken weigh?
So he weighs maybe between 43, 45 kilos. We haven't weighed him for a little while. We tend to keep a bit more of a track on the female's weight because it can go up and down a bit throughout the year with her reproductive cycles. He just keeps growing gradually, but he's about 45 kilos, I'd say now.
Do you know how long he is?
Yeah, he's about maybe 2.2 meters, so he's reasonably long. Our female is about 1.8, so she's bang on 6 foot. But yeah, he's a little bit longer. And you can see as well, I was talking about their scales, very rough, quite textured. And, you know, of course he gets itchy. He likes to scratch up on things, especially when he's out on the walk, because he finds all sorts of interesting things to scratch on, like this statue here.
So you mentioned it's breeding season.
Yep.
How many offspring can they have?
So Komodo dragon females, they lay eggs, and they can lay quite a number. It depends on the size of the girl. Typically the younger girls will lay less eggs, but a really large, older female that's reproductive, she could lay over 30 eggs. So it's quite a lot, and she'll bury them down in the ground, and that is where they are going to stay for their entire incubation period. Now, on a lot of monitor lizards, that period is an extremely long time. In the case of the Komodo dragon, it's about 220 days. It's the best part of 8 or 9 months. Very long time period. And all the while, those eggs are cooking away down in the ground. And then once they hatch, as I mentioned, the young, they'll emerge, and then they typically head straight up the nearest tree, because Komodo dragons can actually be cannibalistic. The bigger males, like Kraken here, if he was in the wild and were to come across a small, maybe 1 or 2 year old Komodo, that would certainly be fair game as a food item. So those younger Komodo dragons really have to watch their back for these bigger boys.
What else do they like to eat?
So they'll eat a variety of meat. They are of course strictly carnivorous. So here at the park, we'll feed them all sorts of things: goat, chicken, deer, beef. We'll feed them fish. Quail, pretty well anything you can imagine, but you know, they really like birds. Yeah, they'll eat all sorts of things, and occasionally we do like to mix things up, and we'll actually pop their food items maybe in a hollow log, maybe we'll hide it in a cardboard box, and that way, instead of just walking straight up to it and gobbling it down immediately, they almost have to work a bit for that food and use their brain to kind of work out how to get to it. And then again, that's extremely stimulating and enriching for them, because they are a very intelligent animal as far as reptiles go.
How fast can they move?
When he wants to, he can certainly get a move on, maybe about 14 kilometres or so when they're running along. But over short distances, like 6 to 10 feet, they can be extremely athletic and dangerous. He can do a big lunge very, very quickly, cover his own body length quite simply. And yeah, we of course work with Kraken a lot. I've got a fair idea of what he's about to do. If he's going to do something abnormal, I can typically pick up on it and allow for that. But again, at the end of the day, they are a wild animal. We bring them out here, but we also always exercise caution, because whilst they are quite placid and quite used to this, you never know what might set them off. And a Komodo dragon that's set off is not something that you want to be anywhere near, that is for certain.
Are Komodo dragons related to the Australian goanna?
Correct, yeah. So a goanna is basically a colloquial term that we use here in Australia to describe our monitor lizards. We have some very large ones, like our lace monitor, that live here on the east coast. Some of you may have even seen those in the picnic areas, in national parks. They're quite common along the east coast. We also have the parenti, another very large monitor. Then we've also got some very tiny ones. Doesn't really matter what size they are, they're all in the same group, and they're all related to the Komodo dragon.
Does Kraken have any ears?
He does have ears, yeah. They don't poke out like mine and yours. They're just this tiny little hole just on the side of his head there. And basically, the way that they work, they're just a hole in the side of the head, but they do have a transparent scale that covers the inside of the ear. So when they're digging around or walking around, of course they're quite low to the ground, less than a foot off the ground. So of course they get a lot of dirt and debris that goes into those ears. So every now and again they'll actually shed that scale, that clear transparent scale on the inside of the ear. That kind of flushes it out, and then that way they've got a nice clean ear, and they'll do that throughout their life.
So we can see that he sticks his tongue out to kind of smell things. Does he have good eyesight as well?
Yeah, very good eyesight. I guess the main disadvantage for a Komodo dragon in terms of their eyes is, again, how low they are to the ground. Their field of vision probably isn't that great. It would be like us trying to see things whilst crawling along on the ground. You're going to see a lot more if you stand up. And it's the same for the Komodo dragon. So what Kraken will do, if he sees something 50 or 100 meters away, and right now he's looking at that kangaroo over there, he'll actually sit right up if he wants to get a good look at it. He'll extend his neck and his head right out to get as high as he possibly can. And he could get his head up right up to here if he wanted to, if he really stood up. So he can get quite a bit of height to him. and then he'll see across the way, and that'll give him a bit of a better look at what's going on. So good eyesight.
Can you tell us a bit more about his fingernails? They look pretty. Could they do some damage?
Oh, they're pretty gnarly. They are quite long. I'll pop his hand up. Give you an example of how those nails look there. Very long. But they are quite blunt, especially when they're cruising around and walking over rocks and substrate. They do wear them down, so they're not razor sharp by any means, not like an eagle's talons or anything like that. The part that you really want to watch for is what's inside that mouth, and that is his teeth. So they are what will do the most damage. You can get scratched by them, and I have been scratched by them, but it doesn't really do too much damage. The mouth certainly does.
All right, one last question, Jay.
Yep.
Can you tell us a bit about how they hunt?
Yes, certainly. So Komodo dragons will do one of two things. Occasionally they will actively pursue prey items by chasing them down, and they might do that if they think they've got a good chance. If that food item's maybe a little bit slower, maybe it's weak, they'll chase after it. But one of the more popular things that they'll do, and most of them do, is they'll ambush their prey. So what this Komodo could do, and he might go into this bamboo thicket here in a moment, which would give us a good example of how well they blend in with the vegetation. He's going to hide away in some thick brush, and then if an animal, even something the size of like a water buffalo, were to walk past, the Komodo quickly rushes out and he'll grab it, maybe on the back leg, and then he's going to retreat again. So they really are designed for that ambush, quick snap bite, release, and then they are just going to wait for that prey animal to pass, and that's when they'll begin to consume it.
Well, Kraken's actually taking himself back home, so maybe we'll finish up there, Jake.
Certainly, yeah. He's got a little bit of patch of sun here, which he always likes to bask in, get one more bask in before he goes back inside. But yeah, we've had a good look at him today. He's gone all around the park. He's met Hugo. He's had a great old time. So I think we might say bye to Kraken now. He is one of our favourites, as is the female that we have. Her name is Daenerys. And hopefully we can get back open nice and soon, and you can come and visit both our Komodo dragons here, because they are incredible. One of my favourite animals to work with. Very interesting, lots to learn about them, and we hope you enjoyed the live stream with Kraken today. All right, thanks guys. We'll see you next time. Cheers.